welcome to Keeping Up with the Chaldeans. I'm Anthony Toma, Junior Binnu. We have Honorable Judge Karen McDonald here, Jimmy Esshaki, and Nicholas Hanawa.
Thanks for having us.
We're here to kind of promote a fundraiser for Mrs. McDonald.
You can call me Karen. I'm no longer
Karen?
a judge. I stepped down in April.
Okay, great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into the fundraiser.
Well, I'm a former Oakland County Circuit Court judge. I resigned in April. I was on the bench about 6.5 years. During that time, I was a family court judge. So my docket was juvenile delinquent matters, abuse and neglect docket, and divorce and custody, as well as a personal protection order docket. And before that, I was in private practice. I was a shareholder at a large law firm, Jaffe, in South Blvd in Oakland County.
Oh.
It's the largest law firm in the county.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, I actually was an assistant prosecutor working at the Oakland County Prosecutor's office. And during that time, I prosecuted child sexual assault cases, and I had a 100% conviction rate.
God bless.
So my time on the bench, I enjoyed a lot. It was good work. I loved helping families and children and litigants who came before me, but decided and it became clear to me within a few years that in order to really move the needle on criminal justice reform and doing what's right for the community as well as the people who appear in front of me, a judge has very little discretion. By the time somebody gets in front of the judge, you don't have a lot of discretion to really make a difference in somebody's life.
Very true.
But the person who does and holds the most discretion and has an extreme amount of power in the county is our Oakland County Prosecutor. That's the elected official. She has about 100 assistant prosecutors in her office, and the prosecutor is the person who decides who's going to be charged with a crime and what they're going to be charged with. And most of you out there, probably at this table and everybody hearing this, either knows somebody or personally has interfaced with the criminal justice system at some point, either as a victim of a crime or somebody in their family or friends who've been charged with a crime. Mm-hmm. And what we know in our country is that we incarcerate more people in this country than any other country in the entire world.
Yes.
It's not working, and it's very, very expensive to the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
So my platform is progressive. I think we need to be smart on crime, not just tough on crime. And I think the community is ready for it.
Yeah, I agree. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you got going on there, Nicholas?
So my name's Nick Hanawa. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the greater Oakland County, Tri-County area. I would say I practice mainly in Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne County, but mainly in Oakland. And, I'm here today because I want to talk to our community and the broader community to let them know that, I truly believe that Karen is the right candidate for this position. Being a criminal defense attorney, I get to interact with prosecutors all the time. In the last few years of my career, I've taken on a lot of higher misdemeanor felony cases that caused me to have a lot of interaction with the prosecutor's office, especially in Oakland County, being that that's mainly where I represent people. And, it was not a pleasant experience, I could tell you that. Other counties where I've practiced and represented people, I want to use the word lenient, and I don't want to use it lightly. It's not that they're lenient, they're letting violent offenders go and this and that. And mainly the people I represent, they're not violent people.
Maybe a better word is reasonable.
Reasonable, yeah, I would say
reasonable.
A lot of times I've had cases where, it's just people, I categorize as two different kind of offenders. I always say this to people when I explain it. I go, there's the person who, made a mistake, the dumb guy who went out, maybe had a drink or did something that, rose to a level of a felony or a higher misdemeanor. And, then there's the serious offenders that are repeat offenders, and they're literally a threat to society and to the community, right. And we need them off the streets. In my opinion, in this current administration, they're not separating the two at all. And being a criminal defense attorney, one thing that what our job is to do is minimize and mitigate, the damages in a case. Meaning, if I represent a client, and you know what, a lot of the time they actually did commit the crime, okay, and the person did make the mistake or commit that crime, and so they're guilty of that offense. But that's why we need a prosecutor's office that's ready, willing, and able to negotiate and plead those cases down. That's a lot of what we do. We're good negotiators. So we have to be able to go in and deal with the assistant prosecutor, negotiate cases down, and, get
So
our
what
client.
you're really saying is you just want to be heard, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's
Current
a little-
administration,
we have
current
no ear.
administration doesn't give you a chance to even be heard.
There's no
Exactly.
ear
And
there.
not only that, even the people that work, the assistant prosecutors that work for the current administration, they don't really have the ability to give deals.
They have no discretion
Yep.
whatsoever.
No discretion.
And just for the record, so the audience knows it, you're talking about administration in the Oakland County
Correct.
offices,
Correct.
right? We're not talking Tri County, so they know what we're
Correct. We're
referring to.
talking what I'm referring to is just my experiences right now in Oakland County.
Gotcha.
With the prosecutor's
with the
office.
With the
Prosecutor's
prosecutor's
office.
office.
Prosecutor's
Correct. With the prosecutor's
So,
office.
Jimmy, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is Jim Esshaki. I'm a businessman in the community, and I'm involved in law enforcement also. So from time to time, I will have people in our community reach out to me and ask me for some advice. And the current prosecutor's office, they have no ear for me or any of attorneys that I reach out to. So it's very frustrating. I've known Karen for over 20 years, and over the last few years become close with her and realize that she's the right person for this job. More importantly, she's a good person, regardless of Democrat or Republican. She's a good person rather than someone that is the wrong person for the job,
Sure.
that's going into it for other reasons. She's going
overstated
in,
well. No, the
she's
current-
going into it for
Yep.
the right reasons.
Sure.
And with that, we have to come out and vote, and the vote for this race would be August 4th. So,
2020.
Yeah.
2020. So we have to, everyone has to come out and vote. And with that, we need to raise money. Unfortunately, that's the hard part in every race. We need to raise money. And I am having hosting a fundraiser on October 15th at the M1 Concourse, graciously using Arkin, Scott, and Jordan Jonah's garage there, and we're having a fundraiser, as I said, again on October 15th. Myself, Sabah Amori, Mike Bahura, Aaron Bellin, Kevin Denha, Tim Dugan, John Esshaki, Robert Esshaki, Derek George, Charlie Gleason, Dave Gorska, Laith Hanna, Nicholas Hanawa, Sean Hermes, Ray Jihad, Laith Jonna, Paulie Jonna, Maher Lazar, Bassam Murad, John Shania, Matthew Shania, and Chris Thomas are all helping with this event. So I'd like
Kudos
to get the
those
word
guys.
out there.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's great.
So, go ahead,
I was
Jimmy.
want to ask,
Yeah.
because you guys are mentioning the issues you're having in Oakland County, and obviously we're minorities as Chaldeans in this heavily populated county that we're in Oakland County. I've seen, it reaches further than, we're just a small portion. Besides us, there's the black community that has been hurt by the reform in our country. So you're saying you're looking to change some of that, some of the problems that we've experienced. And again, we're not all angels. We understand that. But to be heard fair enough, because the current person that's occupying that position is long overstayed, right, Anthony, is what you were saying.
Well, the current administration has the mentality of lock them up and throw away the
That's
key.
what I want to ask you.
That's the problem.
And that's not just Oakland,
It's not
though,
deserving
correct?
sometimes.
But I'm saying to you, that's just not Oakland.
It's particularly a problem in Oakland County.
Okay.
And I think another way to state it is what is the prosecutor's job?
Right.
I believe the prosecutor's job is to prosecute crimes, but also as a part of that, to look at the person that you're charging
Sure.
and the effect of that charge on that person's life and their community.
Right.
And with respect to your community, of particular interest, I think, should be immigration status
Yes.
and what kind of effect that will have when you charge somebody. I think as the next prosecutor, I think it's right, and I will mandate that we do ask questions like, is this crime going to affect an immigration status that could in some cases result in a death sentence?
Yes.
point.
Right.
Those
Yes.
are just common sense questions that aren't being asked
It's a
now.
big problem
Yes.
within our community
Yeah.
Exactly.
currently.
Why is my question? Why has it been so long like this, and why have we sat back and let it happen for so long that a woman can do this in power, and we've gone through 11 years, right? And why do we let it go so long is the question.
Well, I think in the party, people don't want to challenge somebody in their own party, and there hasn't been anybody who's formidable enough to beat her. I just want to make it clear. I resigned from a really good job. I could have had that job for the rest of my career.
Sure.
There's no incumbent that has ever been beaten in the Oakland County Circuit Court. But I did so because the same reason I left private practice and took a giant pay cut to be a judge when I ran for judge. I also want to mention that when I ran for judge in 2012, I had tremendous support from the Chaldean community and won that race by 19 points. But I did so because that's just how I'm wired. I want to wake up in the morning and know that I'm doing something to fix the problems that we have.
Right.
It's just not enough for people to stand back and complain about their political officials or elected officials.
Yeah.
It takes people like me who are willing to stick their neck out and say, no, this is wrong, and I want to change. And I have to say, even though she's an 11-year incumbent, she's made a lot of enemies.
A lot.
and through victims as well. She doesn't treat victims with dignity and respect. You need to give victims a voice. They need to be heard. You need to take people's phone calls, relationships you've had in the community with community leaders. I'm not here to say that I'm going to agree with what everybody wants me to do all the time. I absolutely will not. What I am here to say is that I will sit down with your community, the leaders in your community. I will treat victims with respect, and I will also ensure that people who are charged with crimes are getting due process, and calling ICE and not caring whether or not a misdemeanor conviction will result in an immigration, which could threaten somebody's life in some cases, or completely destroy their family, is just absurd. I think that's the prosecutor's job.
What is your stance on ICE?
I think that in terms of being a prosecutor, I don't think it's appropriate to notify ICE. I don't think that's part of the prosecutor's job.
So that's who has been, like, from county to county? Is that how that all plays out?
I think that is done frequently, yes.
Okay, and I didn't know
And
that.
then, so you've built some pretty thick skin. You've done some high-profile cases.
I have.
Do you want to elaborate on any of those, and kind of just so that people understand that they have a fighter and someone that can handle anything?
Tough on law.
I was gonna say.
Come their way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm not known as a easy judge, but I am known as a judge that will give everybody a fair shake, and regardless of who you are, what your last name is, or what community you come through, I'm going to follow the law. Right. And as a judge, I had to make really tough calls that weren't popular by some, a lot of people. The thing about being a judge is, in every situation, someone's leaving the courtroom unhappy.
True.
And,
So true.
and
It's like a Super Bowl.
you can't avoid that.
Yeah.
I work at that courthouse, and so sometimes, like I tell people, usually the people are coming in mad,
Yep.
and usually leaving madder.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's true.
And here's what I learned, though. People want to be heard.
Yes.
And whether we're represented by a lawyer or not, I had this in my courtroom. There's always a litigant that will say, "Judge, can I just say one more thing?" And my answer every single time is, yes, you can say one more thing. Because most people can respect the fact that they didn't get exactly what they wanted. What really leaves people with a very disgruntled and resentful attitude is when they walk out of the courtroom and feel like nobody listened to me.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
Now, I try very hard every day to do that. The family courts docket is it's a lot. And,
Right. That's so true.
and then also the personal protection order docket, I feel very strongly about. One of the things I worked on as a judge is I implemented and started a training session for court employees on how to treat victims of domestic violence when they came in and asked for personal protection orders. These people are traumatized and fearful, and we need to treat them in a way that respects that and so that they can be kept safe.
And they're coming face to face with the.
A lot of times, you're exactly right.
That
Scary.
what you just said just hit me in a way, because honestly, the dignity that you have to say that I'm going to let them have their last word or say what they want to say, they'll make their last comment. One time I was standing in Oakland County Circuit Court representing a criminal client that was charged with possession of marijuana. He was a caregiver, and he grew more than what he was allowed to grow. the house that he was in got raided. When the police went there, he was over his limit. Okay, so this guy literally just destroyed his life. I'm talking about completely destroyed. I mean, he ended up in a divorce, and it was very bad. Wow. And the funny
Over a couple extra plants.
yeah, over a couple, and not just that. The actual the officers in charge of the case were literally, I mean, almost begging the prosecutor who was in charge of the case to reduce it down to a misdemeanor. They said this man, it was not that serious. I mean, they really vouched for him in a strong way.
Yeah.
Which
But
is
this-
unusual.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
person, and it wasn't a cooperation thing. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, they just literally felt he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. In this case, actually, he was an employee of the caregiver. So
Okay.
he really, So anyways, long story short, he comes to sentencing, was in front of Judge Jarbo, who's also Chaldean, Judge Hala Jarbo. He writes the most heartbreaking letter, that he wants to say. The judge will ask, you have anything to say? Sometimes, usually they don't have anything to say. But this
Right.
guy,
He was
nicest
ready.
guy, wrote this most heartbreaking letter. And the prosecutor is literally sitting there doing these crazy looks, smiling, laughing at him. I mean, it was such a disrespectful thing. I mean, it was just, and that's the kind of mentality that they have there because of who their boss is that these guys are just nobody, garbage.
Well,
drug
even
dealer.
worse, they're not free
bad.
to say that they think something is wrong because they'll be viewed
They'll lose their job.
they may lose their job.
Yeah.
But you did touch on something. Our prosecutor currently, even though Michigan voters have said overwhelmingly they think marijuana should be legal,
Right.
she's still charging
That's what I'm
marijuana
saying.
cases.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing that in Macomb. You know better than I.
No.
But you're not seeing that because prosecutors are saying, I'm not charging it.
Right.
The voters have spoken.
Right.
Right.
Really frustrating as a taxpayer.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
For me to
And
see
I did
those.
a lot of that.
Yeah, I
did
mean-
a lot of that medical marijuana defense work. That was mainly what I was doing, and it was bad. I mean, it got to the point where people would call me with an Oakland County case, and I wouldn't even want to represent them because the reason is that I couldn't do anything for them, and it was just I don't want to take somebody's money and not be able to really get them
Have any results.
do any good for
Yeah.
them. I mean, and I knew what was going to happen every single time we went down the same exact road.
And it doesn't make sense because, like you just said, Macomb, you got the sheriffs are just going. They're cool with
Okay.
in the sense of you're by the books.
There's a statute in Michigan called 7411.
Yes.
Okay.
For probation, right?
Yes.
You get
Okay.
a possession charge, a drug charge. You can plead out under 7411.
Mm-hmm.
After you do the probation and complete it, it comes off your record. They won't even think about using 7411, and that's what it's designed to do. It's designed
That's
for that
Oakland
purpose.
County, you're
yeah,
saying
this is
doesn't wanna
Oakland
use
County.
that.
Every other county, if you go to Wayne County, if you go to Macomb, you're gonna walk through that door. The assistant prosecutor who's sitting at the desk is already gonna have that option just sitting there waiting for it. It's gonna be written on their file, 7411.
They won't give it to you with the prosecutors you're dealing with?
At all. In Oakland County, they won't even entertain 7411.
Let me ask you this though, but does
On a felony drug charge.
where does the sheriff's department play a part in this? Like, I mean, Bouchard wasn't really for it.
Well, the sheriff,
he
Sheriffs
can't do anything.
can only do so much.
but I'm
It
saying,
all-
don't they work with the prosecutors in regards
No.
to talking? on-
Prosecutor does
Okay, I
not
did
have
not know
to
that.
does not have to
The-
go by what they
the
say.
only time the
Okay.
sheriff's office interacts with the prosecutor's office if they're the charging agency, if they're the arresting agency
Okay.
that arrested the person. For example, if you were arrested by Oakland County Sheriff,
Yep.
those cases automatically go to the Oakland County prosecutors to be prosecuted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think in general, though, law enforcement throughout the county is very frustrated.
Right.
The way the office is run, it's very it's very vengeful. If there is,
It's a Gestapo type.
if law enforcement are too loudly criticize the current prosecutor, there are repercussions, and they want the prosecutor's office to write their warrants, and they want them to listen to them about the people that. I mean, look, it's the police officers going out on these calls.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the police officers making decisions about
Correct.
Yeah.
who they think needs to be charged and with what,
Right.
and we need to listen to them.
Right.
Correct.
And that's not
They're
happening.
on the front line.
So they don't have a voice. They're just
They don't have a voice.
No.
The night that I announced I was running and I had to step down a year before the filing deadline, so which is April, I had a police officer come to my house, actually, in the community I live in, 7:38 at night and just knock on the door and say, I heard you're running for prosecutor.
No way. That's awesome.
And he was really excited. I
That's
invited him
great.
in and I sat down and I just said, tell me what you think. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you think the county needs. And basically he said, we want tools. We keep going out to the same houses all the time.
Right.
We're arresting people who are mentally ill. Nothing's happening. We don't feel listened to. And that's really what I want to bring to the office. A person leading the office
Yeah.
who's out there in the community, who wants to sit down, who wants to come on this show, who wants to have a conversation about what are your concerns, and let's talk about it and how can we fix it. With the sheriff's department, with the local law enforcement, with the religious leaders, with the community leaders.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Well, let's talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up because my business is in Holly, which is the most northern part of Oakland County. So I'm still part of Oakland itself. I work with with the police department there just because you're in the community, you
Right.
want to back them up. So Chief Story came in with a instead of cuffing, I forgot the name of it, something instead of cuffs. But what it is, it's a program that they work with rather than arresting, because we're going through this in the Chaldean community. We're going through habitual drug users that are either overdosing or going through an abundance and either shoplifting, stealing, doing all that stuff. But rather than the program was rather than take them and put them into jail, because you can't really jail somebody for doing cocaine. I mean, that's their kind
Well,
of
you
choice
can,
in a
but
way.
I'm glad you brought this up because one of the critical points that really drove me to step down from my seat as a judge and run for prosecutor is treatment courts.
Right.
Treatment courts in this country, all over the country, are specialized courts for people who have who need treatment instead of incarceration.
Yes.
So we have an opioid crisis. It's
Correct.
also reached your community.
Yes.
It's reached every community. So the idea that if you get charged with a drug crime or a substance use crime or your criminal offense as a result of a mental health issue, we also have a veterans court, that there's a team of people, a multidisciplinary basic team, including the judge, the defense attorney, probation, mental health, substance abuse counselor, and the prosecutor, and you try to get this person to understand we're willing to divert you from incarceration
Right.
if you do what you're supposed to do, and here's some treatment. We're the only county in the whole state where the prosecutor will not allow her assistant prosecutors to sit at that table. Now we still do that in our court.
Right.
But they're less effective because we don't have the prosecutor at the table saying,
Right.
yes, we'll dismiss or reduce at the end of it. So they basically just won't participate. That's just wrong.
That's shame. That's shame.
Insane.
Well,
Prosecutor has no
that's
involvement, which is
listen.
the
Yes.
problem.
Just that alone, right there. Listen, I don't invest a lot into politics. I just believe in humanity. Period. Okay?
So do I.
That's
So do I.
That's why we need you. Not
And
want
you know what?
We
Being
need
humane
that.
and
Right.
We've
humanity,
lost that.
we want to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
We want violent criminals
Yes,
in jail.
exactly.
Agreed.
We all
We all
have
do.
children. We want to be
Yes.
safe. But we have to be smart. I mean, saying to somebody, we don't care
Yeah.
that you have a drug issue. We don't care that you have a mental health
That's
issue.
not humanity.
Incarcerating them for a period of time. They're not serving life. So we
Yeah.
also will then release them. And now what do we have? We have our community is less safe because now he doesn't have a job. His family has been completely destroyed and he has less resources.
He's been
Exactly.
itching for drugs while he was in jail, rather
With
than
no
getting help
treatment.
to get off it.
Right.
As I said, first and foremost, you need a good person,
Exactly.
Yeah.
and that good person can pick a party.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And
Yes.
that's why we're
So
here.
we're here to raise funds for the campaign,
Yep.
and but there's a vote that's coming. We'll have you back on to remind everybody about the vote. But why don't you speak a little bit about the vote and how it's got to
important
play
it is.
out and roll out?
So I'm running in the primary against the incumbent, Jessica Cooper, who is a Democrat. So in order to vote for me in August 2020, you have to take the Democrat primary ballot and vote for me.
And anyone can do that, right?
Anybody can do that.
Okay.
You have to vote on that ballot. And then once I beat her, I'll be running in the general in November.
Against
Right now, no one's
possibly
announced.
be an empty seat.
Nobody has announced from the Republican side who's running.
But
No one has announced
to add to that, because we talked about this earlier, is that in the primary you have to vote straight ticket Democrat if we want to vote for you.
You
It's
have
not
to- you
like
have
in
to
the
ask for the
general
Democratic
election
ballot.
where we can
Okay.
split it up.
Exactly. So in the primary, you say which ballot you want to
Right.
vote on. You don't get to vote on both.
Yeah.
Right.
So and this is what I want to say. And I'm 32 years old. I have a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of peers, and our families. And you said this. You said 11 years. How come nothing's been done?
Right.
Okay. Well, our families, our Chaldean families, never really participated in voting that much. Okay,
Right.
this is a true story, and everyone knows this. But now is our chance. Okay, as young adults, and I'm growing up,
Yes.
and I have a kid, and the last thing I want to see is my son turn 16, 17 years old and end up in jail for 10
Yeah.
years for some. I don't know what he could possibly do, but he
Some
could
small
make a mistake.
infraction, yeah.
He could have a drink at a party and.
Well, by then the drinking limit will be 0.04. or something.
Whatever it is,
0.02.
God forbid
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
person does something or anybody's child does something and then they end up getting treated like a violent offender. This county does a real good job on violent offenders, and Karen will do the same.
Well, there's not going to be any free passes.
Yeah,
No.
we don't
No,
want
no,
free
no,
passes.
No,
We don't
she's
want
got
free
100%
passes.
conviction,
We want-
so she's
yeah.
done her job. It's
I
not
know
like
how to-
she's
I know
not-
how to prosecute
Yeah, I'm
people.
saying she's not coming out,
You're looking out for free passes. You're looking for
A little bending. Just
reasonableness,
humanity, just
We're looking for
reasonableness.
someone to listen.
Yes.
Reasonableness,
Bottom line,
okay?
someone to hear us.
Let me tell you something. Karen is the right person for the job. That's why we're all here today.
We feel it.
Okay, and it's time for my generation to go out there and vote, and I'm going to make my parents vote, and I'm going to make everybody vote. And it's not about, don't think about Democrat and Republican.
No.
Pick
She's
the
Karen.
person, not the party.
correct.
I'm big
Yeah.
on that. Pick
Yeah,
person,
she's Karen.
not party.
She's not. She's neither. She's a.
Right.
Right, and in the primary, it's not, that just dictates who goes on to the general election. It's not, when you vote in the primary, that person doesn't end up getting elected for that position, but they're going to go on to the general. And then if you want to vote for Trump and vote for Karen, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
If you want to do that at that time. But it's time for us to step up because this is our hometown, and I know so many of us that leave the state to go work in other states, and we always end up coming back because we love Michigan, and
Yep.
it's where we'll always be.
Yep.
So we need to take control of who our elected officials are,
Yeah.
and this is a time to do that.
And I do want to say, when I ran for judge in 2012, a lot of people, even many people in your own community, will say, don't spend a lot of time because our community doesn't vote. And I do think that's changing.
changed.
It's
I
changed
think
a
it's
lot.
changing.
Definitely.
We've
Changed.
evolved. Like he's not, but I am. I'm still first generation Cal. Well, no, actually you are. Wait, both your
32.
But I'm saying
Well,
both
yeah,
your parents.
He is
were
first
born,
generation.
He is
I'm-
generation. I'm
I'm-
sorry. Actually,
yeah.
I apologize. We're both first generation as well.
first generation.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he
So
is too.
so now it's changing because he's got the kids. So it's like it's a different look at it now. So we are changing. We are voting.
Well,
we are
it's
going
changing
out
because
there.
that's why we're here. Trying
Yes.
to get the word out.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's changing just
This
with
is
that.
proof that
This
it's
is proof that
changing,
things
yeah.
are
And
changing.
there
I
are-
mean, we've even had, from Wissam Naum, George Brico, Clint
Right.
Kesto, we've had Chaldeans now coming in, but it shouldn't be just because of that. We have issues now that we need resolved to say that.
And we have a much larger, like the Chaldean Bar Association right now
Yeah.
has grown exponentially. We have a much larger presence of Chaldean attorneys being out there. And so, and I like that. I think it's a great thing. But, definitely you want to be able to, especially in the county that you live, be able to,
Yeah.
fairly represent people the right way. I mean,
You
it's
want the
just-
right people in
Yeah.
the right seats. So you wanted to say something?
I just was going to say that as in your community, there are a lot of business owners.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that's
Yep.
you,
I wanna
the
touch on
business
that, too.
owners have to have a voice in the prosecutor's office.
absolutely.
Yes.
You just do.
Yes.
Can you explain why?
Because
feel that way?
you deal with a lot of theft, you deal with a lot
ask
of
you about that.
you're victims of crimes.
Yes.
And
check fraud.
Yeah.
exactly, and you need somebody in the office who
Agreed.
will at least listen to you and treat you with dignity and respect.
Yeah.
Especially because you're just asking for reasonableness.
Yeah,
Right.
I couldn't, and I'm glad you said that because I'm a merchant in Oakland County. I got burned a few years ago. We had a guy pulling credit card fraud on us to my manager. On the 5th transaction, he's on the phone. I was setting the guy up. We were going to make another drop, and I had Holly police in my store while we're doing everything. He disregarded it. I had zero help, none as a merchant. I lost $25,000. But here's the crazy part. They drive by the block, and there's a little hint and smell of a cannabis. There's 8 cop cars out that house in an hour, ready for a warrant. So I'm thinking to myself, so I've got the police officer here. I've got the guy who's committing the fraud, and it's probably not just on me he's doing it. How do we go about, fighting that? Like, I know you're saying like, we're merchants and all that. You said check fraud. Wire fraud and this kind of fraud is happening.
White collar crime.
Yeah.
White collar crime.
You're
becoming very big
victims.
today.
And I'm not going to tell you that they don't prosecute white collar crimes, but I've heard many situations. I've had store
I've been
owners
involved-
call me.
I've been
Well,
involved
this
in
happened, that happened. Somebody cashed a fake check by me,
Yeah.
and nobody's doing anything about it. And
I've had a community businessman in the community come to me with a situation regarding he was defrauded by another community member,
Yep.
which was 100% he broke the law.
Yeah.
I mean, this was done by design.
Yeah.
He maliciously defrauded him, and our current prosecutor's office would not charge. It was investigated. It was investigated by the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, turned over to our current administration prosecutor's office. They wouldn't put a warrant out for this because they didn't want to get involved because it was too hard.
right, and that's another. It's a ripple effect. So if they're not going to prosecute those kind of crimes, then the police department cannot. They're not going to be inclined to go out there and spend all this time investigating this when they know that the prosecutor's office is not going to back them up.
Absolutely.
That's
They're
the
not going to write
problem.
their
Yes,
warrants.
correct.
What
Right.
the heck? So they're not going to back them up. Why would they go
Yep.
waste all their resources?
Well-
They're going to tell you, hey, sorry, it's a civil thing. Or
And
deal
I
with
don't
it.
know if any of you have followed the case out of Farmington Hills, the Danielle Sisliski murder.
touch on that.
Yeah.
She was she went missing, and the Farmington Hills Police Department approached the Oakland County Prosecutor's office to write that warrant. There was no body found. They basically said, if without a body, we won't charge anybody with murder. Now, they had a very, very good suspect. Our Attorney General Dana Nessel was elected. They approached her. She reviewed the evidence. She charged it. They just had a preliminary exam, and the district court judge from Novi said there was bounded over with overwhelming evidence.
Wow.
I
That
mean,
was
when
an-
you have the attorney general that has
Yeah,
to
because-
step in
Yeah.
and prosecute and charge in one of the wealthiest counties in the entire
Yeah,
country,
yeah.
and our attorney general has to go in and charge those crimes because they
Shame
might
on
be
them.
hard. What about
Imagine.
her? What about her family?
Speaking
That's what
of
I'm
that,
saying.
our
Shame
attorney
on
general,
them.
Has it been any one of us?
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
man.
and our attorney general has endorsed Karen.
Just to let you guys know,
So let's talk about that.
I did just receive the endorsement of Attorney General Dana Nessel, and it's the first
good.
time I think ever in Michigan where the Attorney General has endorsed somebody in a primary.
Wow.
good. That
And that's
is
a top
great.
prosecutor for
That tells
for
you
the state.
something
Yeah.
there. Huh?
That's a great asset
tells
to
you
have
something.
too for someone to be endorsed.
The system can be flawed. Our family did take a big hit with, not in Oakland County, but just in Michigan as a whole. And it was 40 plus years ago, but when my father was murdered, in a business in Detroit, and the driver got 3 years, the accomplice got 5 years, and the shooter who killed him got 15 years total. They got to walk.
Jeez.
How does that happen? How do you took my father's life? How do you let the person who did it walk a day again like that out in the public? Like, it made no sense. And you get hurt by it, and you just realize, like, damn, like, is this like what it's always gonna be like? You know what I'm saying?
But it
Like,
gives you a unique perspective, and I'm sorry that happened
Yeah,
to you, by the
yep.
way. But it gives you a unique perspective to understand what it's like to be a victim of a violent crime.
Yeah.
And you need a voice. The prosecutor is your attorney when
Yeah.
you're a victim of a crime. Speaking of which, I don't know if any of you remember and are following the Oakland County child killer
Yeah.
investigation. Barry King, who was Timothy King's
from the
father.
long time ago, you're from
Yes.
the General
Back in
Motors guy
75,
from back in
This
Flint.
is the slap, the hockey stick.
No. This was the guy that was like
Van?
that was from like Holiday Inn over on Telegraph and 10
It was,
Mile.
I
There
believe,
was
1975.
Yeah, 75,
There-
yeah,
there-
76,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
gentleman
Barry
from
King still is
Flint.
alive.
Blue
and
Gremlin.
Yep.
He
Remember
wants.
Yeah, that gremlin.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
He
It's got
wanted.
the-
Oh,
he
he's
wants.
okay. I didn't know
the
that.
Blue
Okay.
Gremlin. Correct.
There's new evidence that has come to light during the term of this prosecutor, and Barry King, who's in his 80s, has gone to the prosecutor and asked for the file, and she has not only refused to be cooperative, but she does not allow any of her assistant prosecutors even to speak to Barry King, who just wants justice for his child
Why
who
do you
was
think
brutally
that?
murdered.
What's her reasoning on that, you think?
Taints her.
It's-
There's murkies up the
It
waters.
brings
in
names
Oakland
out.
County.
I don't.
hate this-
I can't. I just want to make something clear.
Yeah.
I am asked on a daily basis for explanations and reasons why our current prosecutor
And only
says
she
the
can
things she says, takes the positions that she does. I will not speak for her. I will not defend her. I think
Right.
it's abhorrent the way she's treated Mr. King. But Mr. King has reached out to me, and he is a big supporter of my campaign. And I have
Right.
vowed to him that once elected, I will do whatever I possibly can to bring justice for his little boy who was brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said to me when I sat down in his living room for a few hours is, the prosecutor was Tim's only attorney, and she won't talk to me.
Wow.
And that's just terrible. People shouldn't be treated that way.
No.
And I don't have an explanation for it.
And that
It's
sucks,
crazy.
man.
It's
That's-
insane.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? You just
Yeah,
want to make
no
sure you.
doubt. So, Jimmy, you want to remind everybody when the fundraiser is and how they can get?
Yep, they
get-
can reach
make
out to me.
donations and-
It'll be on your.
Yep. We'll post all
You'll
of that.
post all
stuff.
that. They can reach out to me, and I can give them information on it. But it is October 15th
Mhm.
at the M1 Concourse, and in Pontiac.
What kind of event is it going to be? How are we going to party and celebrate the
The pre-win.
the
The
pre-win,
pre-win, baby.
Yep,
There
there'll
you
be good
go.
food and cocktails.
Good food and cocktails. Awesome.
And then-
nice cars.
Okay.
And nice cars. And I also want to say that
And if anybody, excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's
And
okay.
If there's thrill rides, there's track rides. If for anybody that wants
Really?
to go around the track at 180 miles
Nice.
an hour, if
that probably
That's not
won't
for
be
me.
But,
Won't be me either.
it may be
That's
for
awesome.
somebody.
I'll
but
do
I
it.
do want to say that I also have a website, Karen McDonald for Prosecutor, and a
Okay.
Facebook page and an Instagram, and I'd love people to log on and share. And even if you can't make a huge contribution, there's a button on my website. People donate $10, $15,
Oh, yeah.
$50.
Yeah.
Every penny
It all
counts.
adds up.
Yep.
Sure.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
But this is a chance. This is the opportunity for us to take back control back over our.
This is
our-
In a
the
good
Oakland
way,
County
yeah.
prosecutor seat.
Someone-
And
Yeah.
it's not, you're going to have a fair person who's reasonable in power, and that's what we
listening.
need.
Listen, just from reading what you've done from your past as a person is beyond for your recognition what you've done in the courts. You've again from everything that you've dealt with human trafficking to domestic violence, and you also are either you started or you're part of. Is it the women's attorneys or coalition or what?
Yeah, I'm on the women's organization of our Michigan bar.
Yep.
But the other thing I am too, I don't want to forget my most important job. I'm a mother.
Yes.
I have a mom.
The biggest security
How many-
blanket
how
in
many
life.
kids?
I have 5 children. I have 3
God
stepkids and
bless.
2 of my own.
God bless.
And I know what it's like to raise kids. I know what it's like to raise teenage boys who make bad decisions
Yes.
and teenage girls who are vulnerable. And I want my community to be safe, but
Exactly.
we owe it to the community also to be reasonable
Yes.
and compassionate.
Definitely.
Yes.
No
And we
doubt.
think you have that.
Yeah. for
Actually,
sure.
we
Is
know
there
that we have
anything
that.
else you want to say to the listening audience?
Just thank you so much for having me, and I'd love to come back.
Oh, sure.
We thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll be excited to have you back.
We'll show the people in probably about 6 months where you're at with your campaign and see how you're doing.
Yep. So everybody support. Go to her website. Contact Jimmy. All of the information is going to be in the description below. We're going to be promoting this episode, and we'll be promoting the fundraiser, and we hope to see you all out there.
Yeah, we thank
Thank
you
you very
guys.
much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Yep,
Thank
it's
you for
awesome.
having me.
Keep
Thank
up the
you.
great work.